Before we dive in, heads up, viewer discretion is seriously recommended. What follows is strictly for education and entertainment only. This is the exact word-for-word federal courtroom testimony from the Sean Diddy Mez trial, reported by Inner City Press. No one saw him coming. The room was tense, all eyes locked on the upcoming witness, until the back doors swung open and Will Smith walked in. Gasps filled the air. Even the judge froze mid-motion. No announcements, no prepared statement, just Will stepping forward alone. Up until that moment he had stayed silent, while his name buzzed through headlines, court rumors, and leaked audio clips deemed too disturbing to release publicly. But something shifted. Maybe it was the swirling rumors, maybe the sting of betrayal by people he once trusted, or maybe hearing that tape played behind closed doors. Whatever it was, Will decided he was done hiding. He wasn't on the stand as a celebrity. He was there as a man who had witnessed too much and stayed quiet for too long. When he finally spoke, the courtroom was totally unprepared for what came next. Because what Will revealed about Diddy, the party, the manipulation, and the fear wasn't just shocking, it was a dire warning. The day began like any other in the Diddy trial. The room buzzed with quiet chatter. Reporters settled into their seats. Lawyers whispered behind their hands, all waiting for the next witness to be called. Then the side doors opened. Will Smith entered alone. No entourage, no legal team, no heads up. The atmosphere shifted instantly. You could hear a pin drop. Some assumed it was a mistake. Others guessed it was a stunt. But the way Will moved, slow, deliberate, focused, and that usual Fresh Prince swagger stripped away to reveal something raw, told everyone this was real. The judge raised an eyebrow. Diddy, who'd been smugly lounging just moments before, the defense table suddenly tensed up. Will walked straight to the witness stand, not making eye contact with anyone. He didn't even glance at Diddy. "I wasn't asked to come here today," Will began. "I asked if I could speak." The judge gave the okay, and from that moment, the whole trial flipped. Because what Will Smith was about to drop wasn't part of any media spin. It wasn't some social media leak. It was something that had haunted him for years. Something that started at a party no one was supposed to mention. "I've kept a lot inside for a long time," he said. "I've laughed on red carpets, won awards, made movies about honor and strength, but none of that hides what I saw, what I lived through, and who made it happen." Then, turning just a bit toward Diddy, he said, "You did." Will told the courtroom the story began like so many Hollywood tales, with an invite. It came through a mutual contact, someone he'd worked with before. The way they sold it, it was supposed to be a celebration, Diddy's birthday. Nothing wild, just music and networking, a spot for stars to chill. He'd been to events like that before, so no alarm bells. But the moment Will got there, he sensed something was off. It was at this huge mansion in the hills, black SUVs lining the front, security tight everywhere. The second he stepped inside, his phone was taken from him. That should have been the first red flag. They told him it was for privacy, to protect the guests. But it felt like something else, like they didn't want anything leaking out. He was led inside. The lights were low. Music was quiet but weird. This rhythmic, almost hypnotic vibe. There were no cameras you could see, but mirrors were everywhere. It felt like someone was always watching. Will said that after a few drinks and some casual talking, Will said Diddy came up to him straight up, saying something like, "Now you're part of the family." And that smile? It wasn't warm. It was like ownership. Will followed Diddy into a back room, thinking it was about business. But what he saw hit him deep. There were people performing, men and women. Some he recognized from movies and music. Others looked way too young. Then there were others just watching like it was some kind of show. And Diddy? He was laughing like it was totally normal. Will paused, swallowing hard. "I didn't know how to leave, and that was the point. Once you're in, you're in." His voice stayed steady but hollow. A few days after the party, Will got a call from a blocked number. All the voice said was, "Hope you had fun, Fresh Prince." Then they hung up. At first he thought it was some weird prank. Then an envelope showed up at his office. No marking. Inside, a flash drive. Will almost didn't open it. But when he did, it was footage from that night. Him sitting on a couch, clearly out of it. He didn't even remember being that out of it. But there he was, laughing at something he couldn't recall. Behind the camera, a voice. Diddy's voice saying, "That's how we keep him." Will said the fear in that moment was like nothing he'd ever felt. "I realized I wasn't invited to that party. I was initiated." That's when the manipulation started. He got more party invites. He declined. Then movie roles he was close to getting, gone. People he worked with for years, they stopped calling. Rumors popped up online that he was gay, unstable, cheating. Will knew what it was. It was pressure. Diddy didn't need to say a word. He made it clear. Silence was the price of peace. So for years, Will said nothing. He smiled through interviews. Will brushed off the rumors, kept his head down, focused on work. But every time he saw a news story about someone else speaking out, Cassie, Don Richard, even Meek Mill's name dragged into it, he thought, if they're talking, why am I still quiet? He looked around the courtroom. Diddy didn't just destroy careers. He made people scared to tell the truth. And that fear, Will said, that's what finally brought him to court. Will paused, glanced at the jury, then leaned closer to the mic. It wasn't just a video that was the leash, he said. From that moment on, everything he did felt like strings were attached to it. He explained how calls came through his agent, event invites, meetings, project. When he said no, things shifted behind the scenes. I'd say no to a Diddy event, and the next week I'd find out a greenlit project suddenly wasn't greenlit anymore. This didn't happen once or twice. It became a pattern. Diddy didn't have to threaten people himself. He had systems that did it for him. PR people, bloggers, producers. He knew exactly who to call. He knew how to make problems pop out of nowhere and how to make chances disappear just as fast. Will shared one specific moment from 2013. He was lined up for a major international campaign with a top luxury brand. We were in final negotiation. I'd already shot the first lookbook. Then, out of nowhere, they dropped me. No explanation. 2 weeks later, he got invited to another Diddy event. When he declined again, the phone calls started. Rumors, gossip blogs, stories about him, strangely detailed stuff only someone with inside access could have planted. Will said it was psychological. Warfare. You start feeling crazy, like you're paranoid, but then you see it, the patterns, the punishments, and you realize you're not imagining it. You're being boxed in. Will told the court he knew other celebs going through the same grind. Some of them sitting quiet right now. Some trapped by contracts that won't let them speak. Some scared they'll get exposed just like him. Then he turned straight to Diddy and said flat out, "You didn't just collect people. You controlled them." And yeah, everyone got what he meant. Will didn't stop at the manipulation. Nah, he broke down how Diddy's grip wasn't just on artists. It reached deep into Hollywood's whole setup. You couldn't step onto a major stage without bumping into someone Diddy helped put there. Will said he went to a charity gala back in 2016. Behind the scenes, big shots from music, film, politics, tech. They were all thanking Puff like he was the glue holding everything together. He watched one streaming exec hand Diddy a USB drive and whisper, "Only you have the final cut." Will didn't say what was on that drive but said it confirmed his worst fears. Diddy wasn't just networking, he was gatekeeping. He described moments when he saw actors, rappers, public figures, acting all weirdly submissive around Diddy like they were begging to stay in his good books, laughing way too hard, always deferring to him in every convo. Will realized most people weren't friends, they were survivors. He testified one reason he kept quiet so long was the fear of getting blackballed forever. But then, he realized I'd already been blackballed, quietly. No official blacklist, just whispers, doubt, and doors slamming shut. He said the only reason he stayed relevant was his audience, the public, because they wouldn't let him vanish. That's the part Puff. Will didn't just say Diddy controlled people. He broke down how, over time, he started seeing it all clearer. He went back to old footage, photos from events, after parties, press junkets, and realized just how often Diddy's shadow was lurking behind the scene, always there, if not in person, then through his power. Then Will's voice dipped lower, real quiet and serious, like the moment hit deep. I stayed quiet for 20 years. I told myself it wasn't real, that it wasn't happening to me. But then the audio tapes started to surface. He said the first time he heard about secret tapes playing in court, he didn't buy it. Then I got a call, not from prosecutors, not from journalists, but from someone I used to trust. They said, "Will, you're on one of those tapes. They played it yesterday. People are talking." He described feeling like the ground just vanished under him. I didn't even know a tape like that existed, but once I accepted it might be real, everything else started to click. Will said he stayed up all night, replaying memories, the party, the blackout, the envelope, the blocked call. It was all part of a system, and I was one of the victims. The breaking point wasn't fear, it was humiliation. I realized if I didn't speak now, My silence would be my legacy, and I couldn't live with that. My kids are gonna see these headlines. My grandkids might see them. I had to speak. He told the court he called the prosecution himself. I told them, I'm ready. Whatever you need, whatever questions you have, I'll answer them. He looked at the jury, voice steady. I wasn't just coerced. I was played. I was filmed. I was used. Then he turned to Diddy, sharper now. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Will closed his eyes for a sec before dropping the next words, like he was steeling himself to say what came next. Getting ready to relive something he'd fought hard to forget, Will faced the courtroom. When the prosecution asked if he wanted to hear the audio, he said, I hesitated, but knew he had to. They played it behind closed doors. No press, no jury, just the judge, lawyers, and Will. I heard myself laughing, Will said slowly. It was hollow, fake. I sounded drunk. No, drugged. He broke down the audio's background. Slow music, low voices, the occasional cheer or shout. Then he heard Diddy, clear as day, saying something like, that's how we break them in. And then, his name. They were saying his name while doing things he didn't even want to repeat. It wasn't just humiliating, it was horrifying. There's a difference between being embarrassed and being stripped of your humanity. That tape took something from him. Will's voice cracked for the first time. He looked down, gathering himself, then went on, I never consented to being recorded? I never agreed to be a part of that. But did he? Diddy recorded it, kept it. Maybe to use, maybe just to have. For years, Will couldn't understand why he'd suddenly feel anxiety when certain names came up, or why he had panic attacks during simple interviews. Now I know I wasn't crazy. I was remembering something I didn't want to. Hearing the audio forced him to face everything. The manipulation, the grooming, the betrayal from people who stood by and watched. What shook me the most wasn't what I heard. It was what I didn't remember. He looked right at the jury. If you want to know how powerful Diddy is, ask yourself how someone like me could be silenced for 20 years and not even realize it. By the time Will's testimony hit the media, it was already too late for Hollywood to control the damage. The clips from the courtroom went viral before the bailiff even had a chance to call reset. Hashtags exploded everywhere. Our Will speaks. On Freak Off tape, Diddy file. And for the very first time, the public saw Will not as a polished A-list star, but as a survivor. Will said, I knew once I spoke things would get ugly, but I had no idea how fast. He recounted how, within just 24 hours of testifying, he lost 2 brand endorsement deals, and a studio put the brakes on promoting a movie he had already finished filming. But for him, that didn't really matter because, years ago, he had already lost something far more valuable: his voice. The calls began coming in, mostly quiet ones, texts from actors, producers, and even directors. Some thanked him. Others warned him. One said, you don't know who you just declared war on. Another said, you've made yourself radioactive. Will mentioned a few names, though he couldn't get into details for legal reasons, but he nodded when the prosecution asked about people like Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, and Lucian Grange. This isn't just a Diddy problem, he said. It's an entire industry built on silence, and everyone's been trading in that currency. He also said he believed others had dirt on him too. I know after this, more footage might come out. They'll try to paint me as unstable, broken. Let them. I'm not here to protect myself anymore. I'm here to protect the truth. Will told the court he expected backlash, denials, and that Diddy's legal team would claim he was making everything up. They'll say I'm bitter. They'll say I'm covering something. But I ask you this, if I was lying, why did I wait this long? Why now, when I have more to lose than ever? He ended that part of his testimony with a line that silenced the room. Sometimes the truth comes late, but it still hits like thunder. For his final statement, the judge allowed Will to speak directly to. Diddy rose from the witness chair, took a few steps forward, and locked eyes with Will. You built an empire on manipulation, Will began. You called it success. You called it culture. You called it love. But what you really built was fear. Diddy stayed silent, frozen in place, while his lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Will didn't flinch. I saw everything you did to those girls. I saw what you did to me. I heard the things you said about me when you thought I wasn't paying attention. You broke people for sport, Will said, his voice steady but sharp. Then, reaching into his pocket, Will pulled out an old photo. This was me in 2004, right before that first party. That's the man I used to be, he said, holding it up so the courtroom could see. I haven't seen him in years. He turned to face the jury. If you think this is just about Cassie or me, or one night in some mansion, you're missing the bigger picture. This isn't just a moment. It's a whole network of power designed to silence the truth. And if we don't tear it down, it'll just keep going. Then, locking eyes with Diddy one last time, he said, "You once said nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody lies like you either." Without another word, Will turned, walked back to the stand, grabbed his things, and exited the courtroom without looking back. Meanwhile, Diddy sat there, pale and motionless, fingers trembling. For the first time in decades, he wasn't the one controlling the room. When Will Smith stepped down from the witness stand, he didn't look like a man who had just won anything. He looked like someone who had finally stopped running. The courtroom stayed tense, almost uncertain how to breathe again. Even the judge looked rattled. Some jurors wiped tears from their eyes. And Diddy, for the first time in the entire trial, looked like he had nothing left to say. Will didn't talk to the press when he left. No waves, no poses, just a quiet exit out the front of the courthouse, his head held high. His head was held high, but his shoulders carried the weight of 20 years of trauma. Later, when reporters asked if he felt relieved, he reportedly said, "Relief isn't the right word. It's just finished." But outside the courtroom, the world was only just waking up. Hollywood went into a low-key panic. Execs canceled meetings. Agencies put deals on hold. Directors and producers who'd once hyped Will Smith suddenly found their phones blowing up with tough questions. The same folks who once called him family were now firing off generic statements about deep concern and commitment to truth. Behind closed doors, crisis teams kicked into gear. PR firms sent out internal memos telling clients to publicly distance themselves from any past ties to Mr. Coleman. While many acted shocked, the internet was already doing what it does best, digging up receipts. Old clips of Diddy rubbing shoulders with top-tier name. Parties where everyone looked way too stiff and uncomfortable to just be having fun. Interviews where guests danced around uncomfortable questions. Footage of Will years ago, visibly recoiling when Diddy's name was mentioned. And most painfully, dozens of clips from the Fresh Prince days, where fans now say Will looked like he was smiling through some serious pain. Fans weren't just shocked, they were straight up furious. Furious that someone like Will had to carry this alone. Furious that whispers were dismissed as conspiracy theories. Furious that the whole system stayed silent for so long. But Will didn't go quiet. The day after his testimony, he posted one simple message online, a black and white photo of himself as a young actor in 1993, standing on a film set, smiling into the sun. The caption read, "He didn't know what was coming, but he made it through. I'm proud of him." No hashtags, no name drops, just that raw response, instant and real. Millions of shares, tens of thousands of comments flooding in, celebrity, activists, and everyday people all thanking him for his courage. But more than anything, survivors of abuse, especially men, flooded the post with their own confessions. "You gave us a voice," one wrote. "If Will can speak, so can we." Meanwhile, back inside the court, Diddy's team was scrambling. Rumors started swirling that more subpoenas were going out, not just to musicians and assistants, but to execs at label, distribution companies, even massive media conglomerates. What Will's testimony did wasn't just personal, it cracked the dam wide open, and now the flood was coming. Whispers said there were more tapes, not just audio but visual footage, some even featuring other public figures. The court sealed these for now, but insiders warned that if any leaked, it would flip the whole industry upside down. And Will? He didn't jump back to work right away. He declined interviews, canceled appearances, but he wasn't hiding. Insiders say he's been spending time with his kids, focused on rebuilding what really matters. One friend told Variety anonymously, "He's healing now, for the first time in years. He's not pretending." Before court adjourned that day, the judge dropped a statement that even caught the media off guard. What we heard today was not just testimony. It was a reckoning, and this court acknowledges the courage it took to deliver it. The final, though, shot of the day wasn't Diddy's face. It wasn't even Will's. It was the jury sitting motionless, processing everything they'd just heard. And in that silence, one thing was crystal clear. The era of silence was